everybody, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Gameable Audio, a VGM podcast. This is episode 30, and today we have a very special guest joining us in to talk about the game that he worked on. The game is called Mecha Ball, and the composer and artist behind this is none other than Joonas Turner. Hello and welcome.
Hello. Glad to be here.
How are you doing on this fantastic day?
Great. It's evening, a little bit tired, but I'll wake up.
That's for sure, because of course we're going to talk about this amazing soundtrack that you've done, and of course it comes in with a lot of different functionalities and so on, and that's exactly what we're gonna kind of pick your brain a little bit and pick a little bit about what is going on basically with this soundtrack, because it's quite of a recent game. I'm guessing this is the latest game you worked on as well. Maybe you are working on something behind the scenes, but this is the latest you released, at least.
Yes, indeed. It is the latest release, yes.
But before we kind of start diving into this one, I kind of want to hear the background story. Not on how you got into Mecha Ball, but what actually drove you into starting with video game music? Like, where did you start from?
Ooh, it's a long topic. I'll try to keep it short. Okay, so as a little kid, I was interested in video games, naturally, and playing games. I eventually heard that we had this computer club nearby, and this is back in the 90s. There was a computer club where there were bunch of computers from Commodore to different PCs and stuff, and I joined that. That was every Friday evenings, if I remember right, after school kind of a thing. And when I was over there, I saw these older kids use this weird thing where there was numbers and letters going from down to up. And I was like, what is this? And it sounded like music. Maybe it wasn't, but it sounded like music. And I was curious about that. I was like, I'd never seen this before, or neither heard this before. So I was kind of looking behind their backs, what are they doing? Kind of just trying to parse together what I'm seeing. Then I realized, oh wow, they are making music. And I asked for a copy of the program so I could take it back home to my home PC. I was lucky enough to have a 486 computer back then. And yeah, it was a program called Fast Tracker, which is a tracker software, kind of an old way of making electronic music. And I just kind of dove into that, and I didn't understand anything about it. I was just looking at numbers and letters. I didn't know. I've seen a guitar in my life and maybe a drum set or something like that. But, what are these letters and numbers? I had no idea, but I suddenly did something and I heard a sound. And I was like, ooh, wow, even scared me. And I was like, wow, okay, let's do more of this letter and this number stuff. Something comes up, maybe.
Which age span are we looking into right now? You said you had the computer club and there were older kids as well. So around what age are we talking about for you in this case?
Extremely good question. I don't even remember. I would guess I was maybe 9,
so pretty
10,
young, to
maybe?
be honest.
Yeah, pretty young, yes. Because in parallel, I started skateboarding, and I still do, but I started skateboarding around 10, when I was around 10, and I remember I once went there with a skateboard, which tells me that I was before skateboard, so I must have been around 9, 10, something like that, I would think. But I went there for quite a few years, if I remember right. So, probably 9, 10 sounds about realistic.
Yeah. And also during this time as well, internet wasn't a big thing, so you couldn't really look at tutorials and so on, a lot of people can utilize today. So how did you get to know the Fast Tracker, this program, more?
It was just, to say that I knew how to use it would be a lie. I didn't. I just kept kind of trial by error a lot, I've just
learning by doing.
Yeah, and I never really made a song in it. I just made weird noises. And at some point I managed to get these noises in some kind of a sequence. So, I could do something like that. I'm like, oh, wow, it does a thing, but I wouldn't always remember how to even play it. Like, I would put these things in, I didn't know how to make them sound, but sometimes I did. But then that kind of dropped. And then we got the PlayStation 1 console, and on that there was, what was it called? Like music? Maybe it was just called music, or something like that. Like on a demo CD, there was this music making software for PlayStation 1.
Okay.
Or it had like loops, so you have like, ooh yeah, and I would like put those blocks in. I would do that. Like I had just a demo version of it, and I would make songs with it like every day. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna use the oh yeah on a different part. Now it's like oh yeah, oh yeah, like it was great. And
I can definitely agree on that. I mean, working early on when you didn't really know how to create music specifically, either through some specific instrument or through computers, but having just those drag and drop bars. To some extent, you felt like a professional DJ to some extent.
Oh, did
especially when
yeah.
you were this young.
Yeah. From like a TV speaker, the whole TV is vibrating. Yeah, ooh, yeah. But then, I mean, after I had my fun with that stuff, let's jump in a few years forward. That's when, like a few years later, we would get internet at home and a better PC. And that's kind of where it really started to kind of get going. How would I put this in decent legal terms? I acquired a copy of a music software called Fruity Loops, which is these days known as FL Studio, but it used to be called Fruity Loops. So I got Fruity Loops, and I kind of started, when I got that, I recognized some parts from both the PlayStation thing and the trackers. But this time I had the power of internet to help me learn Fruity Loops. And I would make
Which is amazing.
Yeah. I would make like some really bad like Counter-Strike. I would put like Counter-Strike sounds in. So it's like you hear like terrorist win, kind of this random noise. And doing that enough, I would kind of learn to make like semi-songs with it. Well, songs with it. I would do that. And I would do that maybe for like a year or two, maybe on off, like not all the time. And then via skateboarding, I got into band music. Like I got into like punk rock, like Ramones and kind of bands like that.
Something we also identify well with Finland, metal bands and rock.
I'll come to that. So, I had a friend who skateboarded as well, and I was like, man, I want to like buy a bass guitar. Like I was really feeling the bass guitar, and he's like, oh, I have a guitar I can sell to you. And I had no idea that a bass guitar and a guitar are even different instruments as such. And so I save up some money and I go and buy this guitar, which indeed was a guitar, not a bass guitar. And I was like, I don't care. It looks cool. It makes a sound. I'll get it. So I got that, and I'm kind of a restless person, and I used to have zero patience. These days I've learned patience. And as soon as I got the guitar, I'm like, I should learn kind of how to play, kind of a thing. But who has time to learn? I was like, hey, I'm just gonna start making songs right away. Which plus minus a good thing. But pretty much like 2 weeks after owning guitar, I was already forming a band. And I found, a drummer. Well, actually, I found another guitar player who actually knew how to play guitar, and a bass player who really knew how to play bass, and one of their brothers played the drums. So we formed a band. And now we were like, rehearsing a bit, and we got our first kind of youth club show. And so we arrived at this show. Well, it was in our school. We arrived like a tour bus. We arrived, we went to our school to play the show. There was no sound person, and no one knew how to use the mixing board and the microphones and stuff. Neither did I, but I had seen a similar thing in Fruity Loops, this mixing desk. So I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, this looks similar to that. And even the layout was similar, like you have all the buttons in the same kind of order. And after just kind of trying around, I managed to... Like, someone else helped me with the microphones. But we put the microphones, and then eventually we just got sound out of the board. And we were like, wow, we do this ourselves, DIY, let's do. And that kind of sparked something in me. Like, as soon as we kind of managed to overcome this barrier, it kind of just opened up to me. Like, that's kind of one of the defining points, I believe, in kind of my musical career, so to say, or life.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, like, we can solve everything's solvable. And very logical after a while. But yeah, so that. Then let's jump a few more years. I would get into metal bands. And I would first play guitar in these bands. But we always had troubles finding a singer. Or, well, when I say singer, I mean a vocalist. And when I say a vocalist, I mean someone who makes obnoxious sounds. So it's like, well, if no one else, I'll try to play guitar and sing, which was a complete failure. I just could not play and sing, so I put the guitar to the side and I started growling.
Okay.
And I did that for quite a few years. And I believe, because I also do sound design. Sound design is kind of my main thing, and voice acting, and also making music. But I guess my kind of sound designery voice acting comes from those metal days. Being able to growl and produce these weird sounds with my vocals. So kind of everything starts to kind of click together. But yeah, playing in metal bands, eventually recording kind of my first our own music, like demos and stuff. Then recording and mixing demos for friends. Demos turn into so-called EPs. EPs turn into albums. So I kind of started doing, before video games, I started doing all this music stuff. And there was a point in time in my life where I was doing all this stuff, but I didn't really know what I was doing. Like, I didn't know the name of the cables or technically what I'm really doing. I'm just somehow managing to get these sounds kind of...
You're like, hook the black cable up to this part and they're blue.
Exactly. And this looks like it fits here. Oh, it didn't. I don't know what this is.
Considering everything you kind of learned from when you were young, trial and error, etc., and what you know today, what was the most important thing from the younger days you think you actually took with you as knowledge to who you are today from that point?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I think it's the kind of, like, as a kid, no one really told me how these things work, how to do these things, so I had to figure out myself. And I guess the kind of experimentation still carries to this day, where I'm not really afraid to jump into new things that I don't know about. Because everything, I mean, if someone's done it in the past, you can do it in the future too. Kind of a thing. I don't know, like, if someone comes up with something, you know, it's doable.
Yeah, I'm guessing patience then could be one great factor. As you said, when you were younger, you didn't have that much of a patience. And now you actually have that patience in order to actually work out these sounds from ground up.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, I believe so. But that also comes from not being patient as well. Because, like, I'm the kind of person, if I have an idea, I want to realize it pretty fast. Even like just a demo version. Anything that gets that idea from my head into something that I can work with. And that's kind of where the non-patient comes from. Which, the non-patient comes from being patient. Like, to be able... Like, these days when I work, let's say, on a song, I create the sounds from which I build the song from pretty fast. From the ground up, because, you know, going through millions of sample libraries just takes time, and it might kind of change your idea. Like, let's say in my mind I hear like a snare drum that goes like dish, dish. Then I go through samples and they all sound like
exactly.
That would change the idea from my head to something else. So I would rather just build that sound from my head as quick as possible, so that idea comes forth, kind of as pure as it can, and as fast as it can.
And considering from after the metal period, as we move along, how did you get into working with video game music specifically?
So, there's two parts for the story. So, when I did, as a kid, when I had like the Fruity Loops and stuff. No, sorry, when I had the 486 computer, I got this CD from my aunt. I'm half English, half Finnish, and my English side aunt sent me a CD called. It was not Click and Play. It was something else. It was before Click and Play, I believe. But this is like game making software.
Okay.
And I was like, what is this? And I realized there was like a manual. And I read the manual. I'm like, wait, you make your own games? Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, you can make your own games? And I kind of dabbled in it with that as well. But I kind of dropped it. I kind of planted a seed in my mind. Because I was like, wow, that's, like, I didn't know you could do that stuff. And then I kind of dropped that. And during the metal days, I met up with, so we were playing this show somewhere in southern Finland. And there was this other band. And we shared, of course, the same backstage. And I was talking with one of the band members. We had similar hair back then. These days I don't have hair. It has disappeared. Oh no! But
it became too metal.
yeah. It left. But yeah, back then, and we were like, we kind of connected, and we talked about like anime and video games. And this dude, later on in life, when I moved to another part in Helsinki, we kind of I think we met randomly somewhere or something, and he's like, what you doing here? I'm like, oh, I live here. And he's like, oh, I live here. And we were kind of almost neighbors back then. And we started talking more and more. And this person is Yukio Kallio, who is a well-known music composer for video games.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, back then we were both kids or youngsters. Yeah, and I was talking with him, and he's like, we were just, catching up, and he mentioned that he makes his own games. And I'm like, whoa. So you make games. How do you make them? And then he showed me this program called Game Maker. And that kind of re-sparked, or that the seed in my mind started to sprout and grow. Like, wow, I want to make games. So I started making games. This is kind of no, it was still metal time. But, so now I get to the other branch of the story. During the metal times, I went to I applied to a school. A sound school. It took me 3 times to apply before I got in, so 3 years of applying. I finally got in, and at the same time I started making my own games. So when my games were in a spot where I needed sounds for them, I was like, well, I just make them myself. And in the school we learned like Foley sound, like creating our own sound effects and stuff. And that really kind of worked for me. And so I started making sounds for my own games, and a similar thing than with the band demos and stuff happened, where people are like, hey, who made the sounds for your game? I'm like, I did. And they're like, do you want to make sounds for our games? And yeah, let's do it. So it kind of, everything kind of grew organically like that. And I've kind of been running on that same thread since 2009. Yeah.
And one thing that is good is also, since you were naming specifically Helsinki, I mean, there's a lot of studios in Helsinki as well. So I guess the daily life as a developer and also musician, it's easy to get actually contacts surrounding people that have the same interest. Or am I wrong on that section? How is the situation in Helsinki on these parts?
Yeah, I would argue so, but like back in 2010, 2011, it was still a different world than today with video games. And especially indie video games, they still weren't really that booming. Like we had Fez, Binding of Isaac, Super Meat Boy, these games. They were kind of coming up.
The games that kind of transcended from Flash almost.
Yeah, exactly. But we had meetups. That's the kind of turning point, I would say, in my kind of professional and kind of hobbyist interest life. Is we had these two different meetups. We have this thing called IGDA, which is, global kind of International Game Developers Association meeting, like once a month.
Yes.
Which is kind of more official. But then we had this other one that was, for me personally, more important, called Indie Beer. And that was arranged by Petri Purho, a person behind games like Crayon Physics and Noita, to mention a few.
Okay.
And, I got to know these people. I went to these meetups and, started knowing the local kind of indie scene.
Yeah.
And via Indie Beer, I met up with my first commercial game, which is a game called Badland by Frogmine Studios.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know this game. I know it's very popular, and it got a lot of traction back in there, and of course still are.
Yeah, thankfully so. Yeah, that was my first commercial game. I jumped into that. They were looking for a sound designer and composer, and it seems that I fit the bill. So I joined that, worked on that, and kind of rest is history.
Yeah, and ever since you have been working on a whole lot of different games, and you have a pretty large discography working on different games, and both for voice acting but also for making sound effects and also the soundtracks, which in my opinion is also pretty amazing, to be honest. It feels like you're presenting like the whole package. Just looking through your discography of what you've done so far, it's like going from I'm working on music, working on sound effect, working on music and sound effect, and then all of a sudden I just saw the voice and I was like, what the hell? Is there something he can't do?
Make money. That's what I can't.
Well, I mean that's everybody's thing. Nobody makes money.
That's right.
But I mean, without going into any specifics of all the different games you have worked on, because definitely people should check out the different soundtracks and games you have worked on, because it's amazing to see so many. Well, in my case, I know a lot of these games. Either have played them or I know of them through other friends and so on. So it is so much fun to have this conversation with you just on that basis. But there is one big reason why I have you here, and that is to talk about today's game, which is the latest released Go Mecha Ball. And to introduce a little bit on this before we go straight into the soundtrack and also a little bit more on the game, how did you get in contact in order to get implemented into the project? Because I remember listening to this podcast, Spelskaparna, which was released back in 2021 on the 11th March, which is almost 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So how did you get in? It feels like it became so early as this game just recently released.
Wow, it was in March? Wow.
Yes.
So that was right. Wow.
I checked the specific release of this episode, which was the 11th of March, 2021.
Wow, that was right kind of just at the time when I joined the Go Mecha Ball team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is also then exciting because you guys are specifically talking. By the end of the episode, it is said that you are working on Go Mecha Ball soundtrack at that point. So we know for a fact that you worked on this almost for 3 years. Well, not specifically 3 years, but at least 2.5 years then, I guess?
Yep. A bit over, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Huh. Oh, wow.
But how did you get in?
I don't remember anymore.
I hope you remember how you got in, though.
Oh, yeah. I do. So, this is, again, one of these things where I've done something and I know a person knows me. A person who I worked with kind of... So I worked on this game called Farah back in 2015, I think? 2015 sounds about right.
Okay.
So I worked on this game called Farah, which was never released. We never got it too far. But in this game, there was a concept artist called Felipe Martins. The very same, that's the concept artist in Go Mecha Ball. And back in 2021, I guess, in the beginning of 2021, he sent me a message like, hey, check out this game. Or maybe he even invited me directly into the Discord or something. That I don't really remember. But he's like, hey,
Okay.
he was working with Jacob on Go Mecha Ball. And he was like, hey, we should get Joonas in, which I'm very thankful for. And so I jumped into Discord, I played the prototype, I'm like, there is no way that I won't be in this game. So I ended up in the game, and during this time, this must have been right before the interview, I made this like demo track for the game, like an interactive music track for the game. So I've had this idea of making interactive music for a long time, and this game just felt like a good fit for it. So I did this demo, and Jacob was like, yep, sounds good, let's do this.
Awesome.
So I joined the team, yeah.
That's great. So, for people that don't know about this game, let's actually go through a little bit of what this game is before we dive straight into the first track of this week. So, the game here, Go Mecha Ball, was developed by the Swedish studio called Whale Peak Games, and the game was released on PC and Xbox Series on the 25th of January in 2024, this year, when this episode is released, because you never know if somebody is going to listen to this in the future. Go Mecha Ball is a roguelike, I would say. Of course, I'm adding a little bit of an exclamation mark to this, because the progression system in this is basically surrounding weapons, upgrades, and abilities, which in my opinion is still a pretty good progression system. But the game is an isometric twin-stick arcade shooting game, a game that focuses on both fun and playable mechanics. The classics first. Many of us already know that when it comes to the style of a twin-stick shooter, well, you use one stick in order to move and the other one to aim with your sight of where you want to shoot. And in Go Mecha Ball, it adds this like feast, which is the ability to dash, and dash specifically as a ball. This creates a fun and interactive pinball mechanic where you can bump into enemies in order to crush the party-pooping robots, basically, because the story is in order to pursue a common goal of fun. I mean, when it comes to the story of this game, it's like super weird, cheesy, but I love it.
Yeah.
A portal is popping up, and the main character and its friends, Cat Rascal, which is the main character and the first robot you will be playing. You have 3 other robots that you are able to, or mech suits that you're able to unlock throughout the game. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit, hopefully, more about them as well. So we get to know the different characters and what's going on in this game over the course of this episode. But of course, we're going to focus on the music, which is why we're going to jump straight into the first track of the week. What do you think about that, Joonas?
Let's go. Mecha Ball.
Because this is the first track is a track that you picked specifically, and this track is called Lurk. There we have the first track of the week. This was from Go Mecha Ball, and the name of this track was Lurk. And I found it interesting that you called it Lurk to begin with. Well, most of the people that utilize the internet today, Lurk might be the great reference a lot of people utilize when watching a stream of some sort. It's like, hey, I'm just lurking, I'm just walking away or having you on the side. Because one thing I usually tend to have, so everybody knows, for people that might be listening to this episode first of all, for every track, I have this kind of feeling that I get. I've been listening to this track, isolated, and written down a couple of words surrounding how I feel about this track. And my words for Lurk is basically it is like this industrial part of music. It brings back to, I would say, a sort of brutalist style. When you're thinking about brutalist, I'm talking about the brutalist of architecture, but industrial is what we utilize when we're talking about the music, but kind of gives the same thing. So surrounding this, it has this thoroughness within the full track, but it also comes down with the industrial part being almost like a machine. And for me, surrounding the music, so those were my words surrounding this. But for me, specifically, when I'm thinking about Lurk, I'm thinking about the boss, the second boss in this game. And I don't know if this is for sure, because when I'm playing this game, I really love and adore the music, but I can't focus on it due to the fact of everything else happening in this game. So considering this, I know you have much more information surrounding this. So first of all, what did you think about the industrial part surrounding the track here?
I would agree to that. Yes. So let's start with the name first. Lurk. 'Cause it's kind of funny. It's kind of almost an inside thing in a sense. So when we were prototyping the boss, and even in the final game, you can kind of see this. It actually lurks in the background. You can, when you enter the boss arena, if you look at the top left corner, you can see it lurking behind a wall. Because that's how video games work. You need to place it somewhere and it jumps out, kind of a thing.
Of course. So yes, then it is confirmed that this is a boss battle music. Though.
Yes, it is a boss called King Lurk. But when I came up with the name Lurk, that was like way before we came up with the boss names.
Yeah.
Some insider stuff. But yeah.
So Lurk itself was a track name, not just like a track name in progress? Because I know some composers tend to use other names for when they're working on it, and then they turn it into something else when it's finished.
Yeah. I mean, our project names were really... what's the word in English? Like very practical. Like for me, the actual name of the song file is W2B, V2B. So World 2 Boss.
Yep.
But inside that, I have a note for myself that was Lurk.
Okay.
And that also helped me, because I like to do lots of things that help me with the feeling of a song. Because for me, when I work on video games, I feel like there's not me, but like in general, there's like two ways of working on video game music, I feel like at the very core. You either make music that's just cool, or you make music that fits the thing in the game.
Yeah.
And I always select the later one. I always like to make something that actually has some kind of sense within the game world, be it lore or mechanical or whatever. So with Lurk, I wanted to make this kind of beat that's kind of lurking. It's a bit chill in a sense. It's not like chill, but it's not as hectic as, say, the World 1 boss.
Yes.
Music, which is meant to be super hectic. So this is kind of a counterpoint to that. Like the first World boss music is just flat out hectic. It's meant to not be a nice song. It's meant to be in your face, scary and disorientating. That's the meaning of the song. It's to kind of make you go, oh no.
If we're thinking about like a mechanical Bowser from a Mario game, this could be it.
Yeah, and this one is more chill in kind of that sense, I would say. And also it gives more room, a little bit more room for the in-game sounds.
Yeah.
And actually I need to jump behind a bit and talk about the general kind of design of the music of the game.
Please do.
Like the thematic and lore side of the music.
Of course.
I think all of these tie into that.
Yep.
The soundtrack versions and the in-game versions are two completely different versions of the music. Not completely, but like 90% different in a mechanical sense. Because the in-game music is fully interactive and semi-generative, So a lot of parts change. When you play the game, the music keeps on morphing and changing. Because I wanted the player to somewhat feel like they're jamming with the music. So whatever actions you do, they kind of add or take away from the music. So it's always alive. And I have this mixing system built in that I programmed for the game within Fmod Studio, this audio media program. And in this, I made it so that many things adjust the mix of the music. And it adjusts it based on whatever happens in the game, and it adjusts it so much that I'm not really 100% in control of it. And I had a important step, like an important junction. Either I kind of start controlling it more, like I kind of force it to certain values and stuff, or I simply just attempt to steer it to take us to uncharted like seas.
Yeah.
So there's room for oddities, rooms for things that I just could not expect to happen. So it doesn't become stale. So it's always a bit different, and I prefer that because I feel like when I play games, when I hear games that do something kind of unexpected and something that I haven't heard before and a new experience, I enjoy them the most. They make me go like, wow, I haven't heard this before. And I wanted to create a system that does that. Like something like a game called Ape Out. This indie game that came a few years ago. And that had like an interactive like drummer music system. And when I heard that, I was like, whoa, like I haven't experienced this before in a game. Ever since, well, that's one of these moments, but like ever since, I always thought that kind of video games can cater to experiences you can't experience in any other medium. So why not cater to that?
I would agree to that to a certain extent. I mean, considering getting a real unique audio experience from when you're playing, in consideration to having, like you said, something that is more designed for the experience. For example, now we have this more dynamic wellness of what the player is doing. So if two players are playing simultaneously beside each other, they will have different experience of both the experience, but also for the music. While if you have two players simultaneously playing the Zelda game, they will both have dun, 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 dun. But considering that kind of experience, when you have something that utterly dynamic, how do you feel about that? That, of course, people might talk well about the soundtrack you created, but they will never be able to kind of quote of what the music is.
Yeah, I personally like that. But I understand, like for a lot of people, they expect it's kind of built into the culture. And that, you can sing a melody and you're like, oh, this is a catchy melody.
Yeah.
But to me, like this, I'm not saying it's wrong to do that. Not at all. Like everyone, whatever you have in your head and you want to bring forth, do that. Like always follow your kind of intuition, I would say. But for me, I simply just did not feel that. Like I wanted to try to do this thing. There's like no proper explanation as such other than I like to experience new things, and this was a way to create a new thing, and hopefully someone else enjoys that. So I don't know, it was just like a kind of selfish experimentation, but also something I felt like it was like a very gut instinct thing. Like I wanted to do this because I see it cater to a game like this. And something, especially in kind of a roguelike formula, where you kind of always start from the beginning.
Yes, you will be playing a lot of times.
You will hear the first world theme a lot of times. And I personally get a bit bored of that. You always hear the same thing. Sometimes it works, but if not always. And I wanted to make something that pretty much never repeats itself. And well, when I say never, I mean there's a chance of like 7,000 variations.
Of course,
it repeats itself.
It's so interesting that you're experimenting in this kind of way, especially with the name drop you did earlier with Yukio Kallio, because he worked on the Luftrausers game, where different mechanics of which plane parts you used, you got unique music, and settings for that.
Yes.
So it's very interesting. Would I say you were inspired by somebody else in order to do this, or this is something you had for yourself for a long time, for example?
Oh, I mean, definitely inspired, but both. So with Yukio, I eventually moved even closer next door to him, also by accident. Like, he became my almost literal neighbor.
Yeah.
And we hung out every day, and he was making the Lufthrauter stuff.
Yes.
I was like, what? You can do this? And it was really cool. Like, I still think it's beautiful. Like,
definitely.
You can see the hand gestures by doing hand gestures. Like, it's beautiful. And when I kind of like, I would say maybe even Luftrausers was the one that kind of tuned my brain into thinking about music. Like, that's a possibility to do that. So cool. And ever since, I've kind of created these systems in my head. And in various games I've experimented, or we have experimented with things. Like, sometimes more simple, sometimes more complex. Like a game called Scourgebringer, I worked on that, and we have like a chill song, and as soon as you hit an enemy, it turns into battle song. Or Noita, where we have like lots of different versions of the song. Depending on the intensity of the game, it kind of mixes and blends between these different intensities and kind of different versions of a song and so on and so on. So this is kind of a natural continuation to kind of that family of thought.
Interesting. Also,
I agree.
So we go back a little bit to the beginning here when you joined in for this project. You already stated that they had a prototypes that you were able to play and so on. Did they have any idea what type of music they wanted for this game? Because from considering all the games you worked on, you have a quite powerful arsenal to work on different type of genres and so on.
Yeah. They didn't have any idea of the music as such. It was kind of more of a, hey, you do you, like, show us what you can do kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I made this interactive system, we hooked it up, it worked, and it felt fun, and we're like, yeah, we'll just continue doing this.
And that is awesome that you might not have been needing to do a lot of experimentation and so on in order to find the right vibe for this type of game. On your own part, did you feel like you had a clear picture of what you wanted the music to be from the start, or did you yourself experiment with it?
Oh, I did.
Oh, yes, I did.
I had so this is. There was a time and point in my life where I attempted to be more professional, but I found that boring. And it was not, by the core, it was not really me. And, I want to be me.
Yeah.
And when, let's say, go Mecha Ball as an example, like, I don't have a proper conceived thought in my mind of what it actually is. I just know the feel that I want to go towards. Like, every single music piece I do is pretty much improvised on the spot. Like, I rarely write, like, I don't write like musical notes and stuff beforehand. Sometimes I do, but rarely. Usually I just go behind my workspace and I'm like, I'll just try something. And then that something turns into something. When I have that, I can kind of start to plan, okay, then I want, if this works like this could work like that, then this becomes this kind of thematical thing and so on and so on. And I do write a lot of memos, like design documents for myself.
Yeah.
But they're rarely anything, it's more about like kind of the feel, or like lore, or kind of mechanical ways of working on things. Instead of like actually going like, oh, this is gonna be a techno song. I rarely do that. Rather, I'm like, what happens in the world of the game in this place? And how does that relate to something else? And then I try to find ways for consistency. So if I do this thing here, then it also happens here. And I start to tie these blocks together. And then I have like a plan of what to do. But actual kind of musical stuff happens usually just on the spot. Or with sound effects and stuff. I usually just kind of improvise them, but I know the framework. So I work within the framework. Like, I build the frames first, and then I paint the picture as we go.
Nice.
But I think that's kind of similar to kind of music. I like to jam a lot, go to like live jams and stuff, improvisational jams. That's kind of my favorite stuff to do. Just go. We don't have any songs prepared, nothing. We just start playing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where happy accidents happen, and like interesting routes, and playing in musical styles that you normally wouldn't even consider playing. And you're like, okay, now they're playing tango. I've never played tango in my life, but here we go. It's interesting. It keeps the mind fresh.
It gives you perspective, I would say, to say the least.
Yeah, and that's where we get into Mecha Ball's general theme. So we had one core theme that guided us in lots of conceptual stuff.
Yeah.
And that was having the game kind of feel like a Y2K era thing. So that's like, 2000s, like early 2000s, late 90s, kind of that ballpark of an era.
Yeah.
So like, PlayStation 1 kind of stuff. For not like as a technical thing, but more like the thematics in the world back then.
Yeah.
What did sci-fi look like in 99, 2000, 2001 kind of a thing. Colors and everything.
Exactly. We almost got the neon and everything when we're thinking about New York or Las Vegas.
Yeah, like Tokyo back in 99 or something. So Y2K was kind of the musical theme for me too. But when people think of Y2K as music, it's a lot about like Euro dance and stuff like that. And
The genres I loved.
yeah. I mean, you're from Sweden, I'm from Finland. We lived that era.
The Nordics made it.
Yeah, pretty much. Almost specific to Swedes, but also Finnish.
Yeah.
But yeah, Y2K. But for me, that was not the music of course I did listen to that.
Yeah.
Like I had the Dr. Bombay CDs and stuff. But for me, Y2K was more experimental in a sense that I had this media player, Winamp media player. And in Winamp there was something, there was like this section in Winamp that was internet radio stations. And I found that, and I was like, oh, what? Like, all these internet radio stations? And I would scroll through them, and I would kind of favorite some of my favorite ones. And they had music from all angles.
Yeah.
Not just the stuff you hear on normal radio or
Exactly.
like MTV and stuff, yeah.
It's the non-mainstream.
Yeah, and that was my Y2K era. That was my late 90s, early 2000s, listening to Winamp radio.
Ooh, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, and that's full of kind of this weird drum and bass music, this kind of weird era, like...
It's like underground
music.
disco.
Yeah. There's this music genre called dubstep, which I'm personally not the biggest fan of as such.
Yeah.
But I do recognize the cool things in that too. But
Yeah.
but before dubstep, there was like, it wasn't dub music, but it was like electronic dub. And I listened to a lot of that through the Winamp radio.
Nice.
So I'd hear like kind of this proto dubstep stuff. It was way different to Skrillex, for example. It was something completely different, and kind of the English scene of that kind of music.
Yeah.
Like before it became kind of this mainstreamy big thing. To me, that was Y2K, as well as video game soundtracks and stuff. So that's kind of my way of bringing Y2K into the game. Using these weird, bizarre music genres that normally people would be like, oh, that's just drum and bass. No. It's specifically this era kind of stuff in drum and bass. That's what I wanted to bring in Mecha Ball. So thus it kind of sounds not modern, but not old. In at least in my brain. And I would use like mechanics, like techniques and stuff from those eras in creating the music.
That's really neat.
Really interesting.
And considering of when we're talking about the uniqueness to sounds and so on, I think it's a great time to segue over to the second track of the week, because this is a very special one in my opinion. Let's actually go with, I don't really know, do you know how you would say this title in a good sense and way manner?
I would say vocals.
Vocals is ooh, ah, ee, ooh. Let's roll with it. second track of the week here, and yeah, ooh. There's like 3 O's, 3 A's, 3 E's, and 3 U's, and that's also
with spaces.
With spaces, yeah. But we're not talking about the spaces. One thing that I really like, before I go into what I think about this track specifically, but the track title of this, having the spaces and so on, kind of points out a little bit of the game, but also the track itself. It's like a giveaway. It sounds, and now I'll come into my thing here. I really love and adore the track to some extent. It really pulls some of my uniqueness strings. It might not be my favorite type of melody and so on, because the melody, to some extent, can be questionable. But it glitches, and that's what I love about this track. You have this unique glitch, which is also thematic to the game, but also to this track. And overall, I really love and adore this track. It really grew on me, but definitely one of the tracks that really sticks out from the soundtrack.
Oh, well, thank you. And I'm glad to hear that, because that's exactly the feeling I wanted with the track. So the track plays in World 4 in the game. You are nearing kind of the
end.
The middle of the mystery. Like, where does all of this stuff spawn from?
And if I remember correctly, in the last world, you are getting mixes of every other world as well. So that could kind of touch into the glitching part happening.
Yeah, so in like each world has its own theme. And this one, from like a musical standpoint, as the game, you're kind of nearing the kind of source of whatever is happening.
The portals.
And and I was thinking, like, we had this kind of glitch theme in the game. I was thinking, what if this is kind of like a world where the music tries to be kind of more human, even though the characters in the game aren't human, but as humans we play something we think of kind of
there's still what is called anthropomorphs or something like that, animal that are human-like-ish.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of implement this kind of human-ish element to the music, but from a kind of machine perspective, like a computer. Actually, very fitting to modern times with AI. So I wanted the kind of music to have this weird, like, is it human melodies? Is it human stuff or not? So I would kind of play with that train of thoughts, like this track, I was thinking this is the kind of computer or like this machine thing trying to kind of convey human emotion and sing like a human, kind of learning the patterns of humans or like human like things, but not really nailing it.
Yeah.
So you sometimes hear like a melody that's almost gonna go. It's like, oh, and then it just takes another direction. Like, I kind of wanted to play with that. And in the game later on, there comes a track where I really play with that. That was actually a really fun track to make, but really hard as well. Lots of hand edits. And this is the thing, I couldn't use really... I did try and use like different software things to help me kind of do this glitchy stuff.
Yeah.
But it always sounded too machine. So I decided to... Every glitchy thing I do in this soundtrack, I make by hand. Like, everything's hand edited to be human, but...
Yeah. Because it is a bit hard to understand. Well, of course, I played through the game a couple of times on different difficulties and so on. So, of course, I know the story. And one thing that is still up to anything is like, where do they really come from and so on? Because you basically just beat them. And considering that you're only fighting robots per se, what if the humans did, in fact, send them as well? Because all we really know about are these portals. But one thing I find very interesting is, due to that, there's not a lot of vocal tracks within the soundtrack for Go Mecha Ball. And considering what you just said about this having some audio glitches, robots trying to be human, the vocal track that we are having here, and since you're a voice actor as well, are you the one that did the
Yeah, no. I had this kind of singing, like this computer software plugin that you open inside the audio software.
Yeah.
And that had like singing samples in it, so just record a bunch of those and then start kind of editing them. But I also sing in that track. If you listen, there's like kind of sing like instruments. That's my vocals doing those.
Okay. It's really fun to hear about these things, because if you wanted to have both the made parts of the vocals that you actually recorded, and then you actually also utilized your own, how come you didn't choose to go with just your voice, for example, for this track?
I wanted to kind of give a false sense of kind of beauty in a sense, and I felt like that specific kind of female vocal was more, it was like a better set of Play-Doh in my hand to kind of create this beautiful melody stuff that doesn't really take you where you think it might take you.
Yeah.
Like if I sang it, I would have had more control over my voice, but that would have colored the thing that I wanted to do. Because when I had those samples, it's not me singing, so I can't really decide where it goes.
Yeah.
Instead, I'm cutting from something that has a melody inside itself that's not dictated by me, if that makes sense. I don't know how to kind of explain it in terms.
For me, how I experience this now, when you're telling me about this, it feels like when you're utilizing a female vocal in this sense, it brings more serenity to the track itself. It brings like this faked secureness to the player. But at the same time, one thing I was trying to get at, but it turns out it might not be the thing, was that when we usually talk about race itself, we usually refer to someone as a she. So that was also one thing that I was thinking about. Like maybe that could have been one sense you were going at.
No, it was a bit more practical for me. But like imagine if you were supposed to produce a image, a like drawn image or something, visual image of like a glitchy image. If you start to draw it from zero and you start drawing as a glitchy thing, it will end up, at least if I did it, it will end up looking kind of fake glitch. Like I would start polishing the rough edges too much. Or when it's like a ready-made image and you start cutting it with scissors and gluing the images all wonky, it becomes kind of more realistically glitchy, if that makes sense. Because you are kind of cutting something else into this image instead of kind of drawing the image yourself.
Considering that we talked a little bit about having a red thread, like generally speaking, over the course of this soundtrack, there are different zones in this. As you said right now, with this being the fourth world theme, how did you turn out to have this more of a red thread, as the different kind of locations or zones or areas have a pretty unique type of style to themselves? But of course, as I've played through it, I can say with honesty that they are pretty consistent to it. So like how did you work this out to have a good red thread throughout the experience?
Yeah, so now this is following the lore, and now we have to also remember that video games, when video games are in development, they are prone to changes as well. So we've done a few iterations actually on the story, and the music followed one of the original stories that we still follow. I think like how we've changed certain parts, they still fit the whole thing. And the music kind of luckily fits too.
Happy little accident.
But I mean, I had a few stressful moments. But so when I came up with the themes and kind of the red thread with music, it was from kind of a slightly different era of the game. But the themes of the worlds are still the same. So World 1 is kind of more game show / arcade-like. And you can see these camera robots flying around. Or these helper robots. Yeah, I guess we can call them cameras.
They're flying robot cameras.
So, And then World 2 is kind of more sewery, like underneath all of this stuff. And then World 3 is more of a...
You got outside.
I mean, it used to be a bit more industrial, like a factory-like setting. But we made it a bit nicer, but it still has elements of that. And World 4 is kind of this more glitchier space. But yeah, so the Red Thread in, for example, Lurk. We listened to Lurk before Ohio. In each world, they have this kind of thematical thing, like the lore aspect to them. But I also want to kind of make the instrumentation, like what the instruments are and what do I make the music out of, different to each world. But I would follow kind of the same formula with each world from like a musical theory standpoint. I would use this thing called the Circle of Fifths as a simple concept. That's just kind of that's a way to jump from notes to other notes in steps called fifths. It's gonna be a long explanation if I go into that. But so it's kind of semi-simple and dumb, but it gets the job done. So I used that as my reference. So that's why the tracks kind of are harmonically always in tune with each other. Yeah. But I would create the actual music per world from completely different sets of instruments. And Lurk, the weird industrial aspect comes from me making most of the sounds out of literal rubbish. Junk.
Yeah.
So, for example, the bass drum in Lurk or World 2 songs is a industrial-sized ketchup jar.
Industrial-sized ketchup. Okay.
yeah, and the snare drums are like tin boxes, like IKEA boxes, wine holder boxes, and stuff like that. The hi-hats would be like coins wrapped around a string, or like handcuffs and stuff that. All kinds of random junk. Sometimes the bass in some of the tracks is on bicycles. You know, in the bicycle rack you have this kind of octopus stretchy thingy with which you can, let's say you are carrying like a box. You put it on your bike rack, you use this stretchy thing to attach it to your bike so it doesn't fall off. Yeah. I would stretch one of those and use that, play that.
So it's like a bass.
You can try it yourself, you'll hear a doom doom. Yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
Like
so
use
stuff like that. Yeah. And that was... Oh, I'll tell you, that was a lot of work.
Was this the birth of the Mecha Ball thrash metal? Or more like trash metal?
Yes. Yeah. But, you know, it's made out of stuff like that.
It's so much fun that you experiment with these things, because now we're coming into the more, like, experimental parts, like... I know you talked about it in the other podcast with Spelskaparna, about creating sounds with things that doesn't really... You don't think it is that thing, because, well, in the example you were talking about this handle that you had for the door, of how to make a reload sound for, and, well, audio-wise it sounds exactly, or what I experience it to sound like. Because nothing sounds like we think it sounds, but when we're hearing something faked about it, we're like, oh, it's definitely that. We're that silly to some extent.
yeah. It's easy to fool the human brain.
Definitely. I've been fascinated about these things,
hard.
especially from movies and so on. It's like how they did the sounds for your old classic Disney films and so on. It's like, that can't be true! Ah!
Yeah, I love that stuff. Like Wall-E, they have this DVD where they have like the making of the sounds of Wall-E, and they have this little part of old animation sounds.
It's amazing.
Ooh, it's so nice, so nice. Yeah, amazing is the right
But
word.
before we head into the next track here as well, what is the most specific thing that you thought you'd never would work with when you created this soundtrack? It's like a specific item to create a sound or something like that.
That's wow. I don't know what to answer to that, but maybe, I mean, it's not really a instrument for composing the music as such. It's more like the in-game instrument of glitching the music, which I which was actually for a long time a ponder I had no answer to, but I knew I wanted to do it. So in the game you have these glitched enemies that kind of emanate and this weird thing, and they kind of look weird and warbly. When you go near them, or then the closer you are to them, the music starts acting weird.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to kind of technically figure out how to do this, and now as I did figure it out, I'm like, this is dead obvious, but like, back then it wasn't. So I used an effect called a delay,
Okay.
Which is, delays like bum bum bum, like
Yeah,
an echo,
yeah.
bum bum. So I would use that and stretch the time. So in delay you say, so this is the original sound, like bum. You put a delay, it's like bum 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 bum. But if you change the time between the bum 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 bum, it starts stretching.
So it
stuff.
becomes
it's like,
inconsistent.
You get these kinds
Yeah.
of things. So use that as a instrument inside kind of the technical side of the game, and that became a thing. Yeah, I didn't expect to use that, and now it makes complete sense to use that. And I guess that's my answer.
That's a good answer. And with that said, I think it's time for us to go into the third track of this week. And the name for that track is called, and I love this name to be honest, it's Wares. Wares. Yeah, like I said, first of all, I just love the title of this track. For everybody who's done any sort of downloading to any sort of extent, for legal stuff, of course. Wink, wink. Know the words of Wares.
Yeah. But it actually holds a dual purpose. It also means like a shop
Yes.
wares.
I
and
am.
it's a shop track.
Yes, I'm definitely sure that this was the shop track. So considering this one, even though it doesn't really have like a full kind of glitch style, it still comes into with a glitchy thematicism over it. And I really like and enjoy this. And this is something we hear a lot of times within the soundtrack of this game, not specifically for this track. But we have more melody, it is more serene because it doesn't really have this hectic style or melody over it that we usually hear from other tracks that are, of course, out in the open. So it feels more protective of you, and you can just enjoy life.
Yeah.
So for me, I really enjoyed this track. It gives me a vibe, so almost I haven't really heard much of the music from the game Jet Set Radio, but I would, if somebody says like this is how Jet Set Radio sounds like, I would say yes, this is Jet Set Radio music. It's glitchy, it has this older vibe style, so it kind of comes into what you talked about, like Y2K, and having an older type of style on this soundtrack.
Yeah, and like a lot of soundtrack in Mecha Ball is kind of inspired from the tracker era of music, as well as the Winamp radio stuff. And I kind of wanted to keep that spirit,
Yeah.
even though I didn't make the music in a tracker, because I prefer to use like a more traditional digital audio workstation.
Yeah, yeah.
But I still wanted to keep the same kind of line of thought when making the tracks, which is interesting. But indeed, it's a shop track, and in-game the function of the track is not to be too hectic.
You're not gonna stress them out and give them a heart attack while shopping.
Yeah, especially with this track, because the next track in the game that happens after this track is extremely hectic.
Yes.
By design. Yeah, it's meant to be not nice. And actually, that's a kind of when working on the music on Go Mecha Ball, I also did the sound design, and in this game I wanted to marry these two elements together. So
Yeah.
it's really interactive music, and the sounds affect the music affects the sounds in various ways, both ways. And I did not want the game. So this is not controversial, is the wrong word. This is kind of a, like, even when I work on a lot of games, I want to make the game sound kind of nice and clean. But with Go Mecha Ball, I did not want to really do that in a design way. Or designed way. I wanted the game to sound kind of noisy, messy, and when I say that, I kind of wanted to chase a bit of realism, as the game is very physical.
Yeah.
I have like these physics-based sound systems in the game. So when you roll as a ball, you hear all these different surfaces. You hear your mechs, kind of what the mech is made of. And you hear the ground material, you hear the enemy's materials. You have physics interactions, hitting them, they hit a wall. And now imagine having, let's say, 10 mechs in the real world. You know, these house-sized things. They do not sound nice and light. Like one of those hits another one, you're gonna hear a lot of clank.
Yes.
And loud clank. And I wanted that. I did not want to make like a safe sounding game. I wanted it to sound
Rough.
physical. Yeah. Yeah, like tangibly physical. And you know, if you have 30 robots around you, you're gonna hear 30 robots around you. If their footsteps, if their hinges on their limbs, and their motors, their tracking systems, you're gonna hear all of this stuff and the music on top.
Were there any sort of limitations for you while you worked on this with sound design or the music that you felt was limiting you, or maybe you thought more like, oh, this is needed?
Really, not really.
No?
I mean, yeah, in a sense that not really. How would I say this? So we are a small team. We can only work on X amount of things to meet deadlines.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things we've had to change or cut kind of mid-development. So I, like, with sound design and music, I had a million other things too that I wanted to do. But they just weren't realistic for the scope.
Yes.
And as games change during mid-development, there are things that kind of I have to adapt to as well.
Yeah.
Like, when I was talking about the circle of fifths earlier, like composing using that, I was kind of more literally following it, to kind of make the songs go in a certain order.
Yeah.
But then mid-development, we changed how the levels work. And that broke my music system completely. And I'm like, oh no, but you know, the game comes first.
Yeah.
My system is to help the game, not to kind of step over the game.
Yeah. That's usually what we talk about in development terms as kill your darling.
Yeah. But this darling I didn't kill, I changed it. I Frankensteined it. I could still sew the hands together and, you know, half an eye. So it still works in that way, just a bit differently.
Okay.
But, you know, it's these small things that change. I just find ways to make it work. And luckily it's minimal amount of work to change that. But, you know, things change. But like, it was like nothing limiting, like overly limiting. It was just me being a bit over ambitious at first and then scaling down, like, okay, this is realistic. And the game, you know, our first iterations of the game were different than what we have now.
Okay.
Like video games usually do.
Do you find it hard to limit yourself to go down to something? Because it's always nice to have this grandeur kind of a vision for yourself, to almost strive to have some sort of perfectness to it. Is it hard for you, or is it easy for you to scale down and be more realistic?
Semi-easy, I would say. Easy-ish. Of course, it's never like, yay, I'm gonna change everything. Like, that's rarely the case. But at the same time, not to sound kind of pompous here or like, full of it, so to say.
Yeah,
but I worked on enough games to know, okay, it's time to leave these things and change these things and scale back. Like, it's not my first time being in a similar situation.
Yeah, of course it will help with experience to understand what needs to have more priority and which does not, of course. And having to work on so many different projects and so on, you have a lot of experience during this. Of course, you've made most likely issues or problems over this course of time, and you learned from them. And this is just a normal process for everybody, not just composers. Everybody goes through that in life. It's like, so I need to pay my rent. Oh, I thought I didn't need to.
Yeah. And I also do game design. I made this game called Tormentor X Punisher. It's kind of like my commercial game. Of course, I didn't make it solo. I had a team on that too, Tuka and Bo. And, I made my hobby games and stuff, so I kind of understand how games work technically as well.
Yeah.
So, it's when we talk about these things, I'm like, okay, I know the struggle you're going through with something, or not needed struggles, maybe a heavy word, but I know the thinking behind these changes. I understand it.
Yeah.
So I'll adapt to those. And I'll find a way.
Yeah. Do you find sometimes that it can be a problem for you as well to know these things? Sometimes you might feel like, oh, I know exactly how to do it, but I'm working on the music, so I can't really do specifically that thing. So, and then you ask for somebody else to do it, and they're like, oh, no, we can't do it. It's like, but you can.
Oh, yeah, from like a game design perspective. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Had that been a problem for you?
I mean, maybe
once or
maybe
twice?
Not a problem as such, but it's one of those things where, but also to know that there are times when you can be wrong. Like I remember this a few times in the project where I was like, no, listen to me, this is how it works. And then Jacob is like, no, I know what I'm doing. I'm kind of not doubting, but a bit like, okay, we'll see. And then he does a thing and I'm like, damn, that actually did work better than my idea.
Yeah.
And I can learn from that.
That is also one thing that is amazing with game development. There's not just one solution for anything. There is so many. It's literally impossible to say how many different variations one can have surrounding code or surrounding solutions. So I would say it is good to always speak your mind and have a small discussion, because you might actually come out of it with a much better idea. But of course, we can't sit and discuss everything for too long. Then nothing will happen.
That's right.
But it's nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's time for the next song here. Because I don't have anything else. I really love The Door Wears. But I'm excited for the next track, to be honest.
All right.
So the next track we're going to go with is called Pit Stop Kickouts. neat and nice track. Pit Stop Kick Out. I can't say much about this song because it is so neat, nice, serene, and I absolutely love this track. And why I'm saying this in this kind of manner is due to the fact of the, I would say, consistency within the soundtrack. This one really sticks out. When we have the vocal track is stuck out in one way, this kind of sticks out the other way. So if we have the full Go Mecha Ball soundtrack, that will kind of have this red thread being the middle part. Oh, that sound that's going one way. Pit Stop is going the other way. This one is could have been much like Where's this really nice shopping track. And I'm actually I'm not sure where this track is played, to be honest. Is this a credit theme or something I haven't really listened to?
First off, thank you. And yes, it is the World 3 shop song.
The World 3 shop song? Holy crap.
Yes. Yeah.
No, I really love this one because it is. This one feels like when you're listening to a normal track, to be honest. And I think it's one of the tracks that are closest to being what people are or might be used to listen to. Even though that Go Mecha Ball, of course, is made of a lot of tracks. But I would say every other track or all the other tracks has some kind of character. While this one is just, hey, come here, you know me. It just embraces you.
Yeah, and that was kind of. I'm glad to hear this analysis of these tracks because a lot of these are kind of the things that I was going for. So I'm actually really glad to hear that.
You're aiming straight and correct, then.
Damn! Wow! Finally. Unlike in the toilet. But yeah, so continuing with the red thread between the consistency and tracks and so on and so on. World 3 was a slightly an anomaly mid-development.
Okay.
Originally, because World 3 is kind of more what I would say like machine rock kind of stuff. It's kind of guitar orientated more than synthesizer. But originally, it was not like that. I did not design this line of thought. Originally, I was making something more psytrance-like.
Ah, okay.
Like World 3 was more psytrance. But the rest of the team was like, it should be more rock and roll. And I'm like, rock and roll? What? Like that. In this, I actually stressed that a bit. I was like, what? I'm not. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't get behind it, but then I just took away all the kind of psytrance like bass and drums and stuff. But I kept the instruments that I created all these things with.
Okay.
And I started making kind of more rock-like stuff. Like I took all this synthesizer stuff, like kind of more melodic and kind of all these other synthesizer things away. And I started just jamming with the guitar coming out of these tracks.
Yeah.
And I made like a blend of these two. Like you couldn't probably tell that it's psytrance originally.
No, not when we listen to this specific track, but if we listen to some other track from World 3, we might have some closer relevance to it at least.
Yeah, there's a lot of like effects in the music, and that's the psytrance stuff infused with the kind of guitar-y rock stuff.
Yeah.
But I took it as a challenge. Like I was like, okay, I'm gonna do so-called machine rock. I don't know what if there's a real term for it. Video game rock. and
V-rock.
And I kind of thought, okay, I'll use the guitar as a real instrument. Everything else is synthesizers.
Yeah.
So the drums are completely synthesizers and stuff like that. It's not a real drum set and stuff. And it was interesting to kind of make the guitars fit into that. So I had to process the guitars in various ways to make them actually fit with the synthesizers. So it feels kind of natural. Like technically speaking, the guitars are actually kind of interesting in a sense. I do a lot of things that you don't really hear, but I do them for the reasons to make them fit with the other instruments. But this specific track, as it's the World 3 shop,
Yeah.
I was thinking of like a pit stop kickout, like a garage. Like, you know, it's late evening at the garage, you're like going to the garage, have a beer or whatever, a refreshing drink in the heat of the sun is settling down, you have a refreshing drink, you're fixing your parts, kind of a thing. That was kind of the vibe I was going for.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to make it serene, because similar to the World 1 boss, it is a pacing thing again. The second the boss track that comes after this one is hectic again.
Yes, if I remember, the name is Waveform, if I remember correctly. And that one, there's a lot of things going on in it. Oh my god. Waveform and Test, Tasmanian Devil has similarities.
Yeah, and that's guitars pushed somewhat to the extreme editing wise in that track. It's there not a lot of consistent notes in that one. A human could not play that. Yeah,
a couple of humans might.
Yeah. If they can, I want to see their fingers.
I'm thinking about a couple of people at the same time playing, not just one.
Oh yeah, I mean,
so if they are like 4 or 5 people, then maybe they can play it.
Not to mention, I would love to see their guitars.
You have those split guitars, or maybe those with 3 or 4 necks and so on.
Yeah.
Those like mutant guitars.
Yeah.
Those are just crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of the idea of the track. It was fun. I enjoyed it. That's actually one of my favorite tracks to, especially the soundtrack version. One of my favorite tracks to kind of make. And I spent actually a lot of time on the soundtrack version, because I kept redoing the guitar solo stuff. Because like even the guitar solos in the soundtrack version, OST version, they're all improvised. You know, I like a guitar solo, I can't write a guitar solo. It just feels wrong to me personally. So I just improvise until I find a take that's good, and then I start refining that. So I took a few, like you can actually hear it, that when the guitar solo starts, I actually played that through something called a spring reverb, which is a set of metal springs. You send the signal through that and they go like, they give you like a little reverb. You can hear that in the beginning. Then after that you don't hear it. Then you hear it a bit later. These are from like different guitar solo improvisation takes that are just glued together.
But when it comes to the soundtrack itself, when you did the OST that everybody will be able to listen to and to purchase in the end when it is released, it is hard for you to put them together when they're so dynamic, so alive when you're playing the game. Like, anyway, you put in total 27 of these tracks together in the end. And for me, just thinking about these different tracks and so on, how many tracks is it per world, so to speak?
It's 6 tracks.
It's 6
per
tracks.
World, I think, yeah. I think, wait, it's a 4 shop boss. Yeah, 6 tracks per level.
Yeah. And considering having 6 tracks all in the same kind of structure to some extent, what was the hardest thing when you put them together? What were some of these tracks more easy to put together than others? Were you able to get like a pure sense of like, oh, this is how it should sound with the dynamics?
So when I made the kind of original in-game versions, so when I of course I made the in-game versions first, the soundtrack came after the game was done from my part. They are all kind of these blocks, like I don't have a song. Yeah. Like when I start writing, it's not a song, it's just, you know, so how the music works in the game is every single instrument is its own like set of sounds within our audio software, Fmod Studio, which runs the sounds in the game. So I don't have like you know, when you normally listen to a song, you like download a album or something, you buy an album and you download it, like the Mecha Ball soundtrack. So when you check the songs, you just see like it's a so-called stereo track. It's just a single track. Yeah. But in the game, how I have it is all the instruments, the drums, the bass, the melody instruments, the various chords and stuff are all separate.
Yes.
and they get mixed within the game. So I didn't really have a full song at any point. The boss songs are the closest things to being like a full piece.
Yeah.
Because those don't really randomize that much.
Yeah, exactly. They have their pattern, and you have the options you can select from that, of course. The only thing that can be more dynamic is how often a player would hit the boss. So it might take 2 seconds for you, or 10 minutes.
Yeah, and also like when you go in the ball mode, I don't know if you noticed, you get another instrument on top.
I actually haven't noticed that, but that's just how focused I am when playing.
Yeah. And when you kill enemies, they produce
detail.
melodies and stuff. Yeah. Or notes and stuff. Yeah.
So,
It's
so this
full of
instrument
stuff
that you're adding on, is that something to just try and focus on that you are in ball mode, or was there any other specific idea why you chose to do it that way?
Yeah, I just wanted to feel like you are jamming with the music. So that's kind of part of that. Like you are now a ball, like on some it changes from track to track. So let's say on some track you have like a shaker percussive sound, like that's when you're a ball. When you release ball mode, that instrument disappears. Yeah.
Now that's an interesting idea to that.
Yeah.
There are multiple kind of versions of this already happening in other games. Like if you're if you're already winning, some games have shown like, oh, you're going to add this. For example, Donkey Kong, when you're underwater, you have more of that underwater vibe, even though you have the exact same melody to it. But you have this that you are submerged. It's like you're listening to the music while underwater, which is just crazy.
Yeah, and I love stuff like that. That's to me so interesting. Like, it's just how would I say this? Like it ties the music better into the game world and your actions, and I like when games do that. It's like the strength of games that you can't do that with movies, really.
And no,
movies just
that
a
would be
linear
weird.
format. Yeah, but like in games you are in control of things. Like it makes sense to me that the soundscape acts accordingly, or I personally like that.
Did you ever thought about having like the music played like you're in a jar or something when you head into the ball mode, because your character is kind of heading into the mech instead of adding the jamming part on top of it? It's like taken away.
So when you go in ball mode, this used to be more aggressive, but then I toned it a bit.
Okay.
I actually cut frequencies of the music away when you're in ball mode. So you hear more of the material that you are rolling on top of, as well as enemy warnings and stuff.
Interesting.
You hear all this stuff more when you're in ball mode. Like the music acts accordingly. What else? It also mixes stuff, like the bass becomes a little bit louder and the drums become a little bit lower and stuff like that. Like I do a lot of that kind of stuff. So that's when I earlier talked about the music's mixing kind of taking its own life. That's kind of what I mean. Like all these systems adjusted, and I kind of want to be a little bit out of my hands. So it's, even to me, it's new and fresh and interesting.
I think for the last track that we're going to head into right now, I have still some couple of questions surrounding the soundtrack and some tracks that are existing on it. So I think it's better to just head into the last track of this week. And the track name for that one is the same as the title. I just thought like, hey, let's save the best track for last, in my opinion. But this is my opinion, not yours. I'm the one who selected the track order. This was my favorite. So, yeah. Let's head into the last track of the week. Go Mecha Ball. we're fading out the last track of the week. This was titled as the same as this game, Go Mecha Ball. And considering the music I'm hearing on this, I am pretty sure, I haven't really listened to it one-on-one, but I'm pretty sure this is when you start the game, this is the first track you're listening to. But for me, when I'm listening to this, and this is what I've written down, I get so many references for some reason to another game. And the game I'm talking specifically about is called Child of Eden, which is an Xbox Kinect game, which I loved and adore. Though we don't have any vocals in this, so I'm kind of missing out on that one. But for some reason, with the instruments selected on this one, it really brought out the nostalgia for me, and I loved it. So,
interesting.
So for considering this one, it's a blast. I really enjoyed this one, and it just had to be the last track of this week's, because I love to end the episodes on the top. Of course, it feels like we've been on the top ever since we started this episode, so this is the highest of the tops. It's weird, okay?
Oh, well, thank you. Nice to hear that. Yeah, wow, actually, that's interesting, yeah, I haven't played the game, but I've heard the name, but, okay, I need to check it out.
Yeah, for some reason it has this serenity to it, and the music not the instrument you selected for this and how you did this, it feels like a glitchy, I would say like an indie rock pop type of style. And they actually have this indie pop virtual band, because in Child of Eden they have created this virtual band. It's not a non-existing band. It's called Genki Rocket. And this is made by a producer that has worked on multiple of these same styles. They make these made-up bands. And for some reason, it feels like it comes with the same heart to some extent. And to be honest, I think this could be a track that I would love to just listen to from time to time without any context.
Oh, nice. Glad to hear that. Yeah. In this track, so where I think, like, for me personally, the interest in this track is, like, in the game, as you were also kind of semi-wondering where, saying where it's from. So this is another part of the interactiveness of the soundtrack. When you start the game, you only hear these kind of synthesizer, so-called pad sounds that go like dee, 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 dee. That's all you hear, and like and effects.
Yeah.
The further you get in the game, you unlock more instruments for the main menu theme.
That is interesting.
When you beat the first boss, you get like more stuff. When you go to World 2, you get like a bass and stuff like that.
And for me, who accidentally completed the game on the first run,
yeah, you get everything. Almost everything. Almost everything. Because when you beat the game, there's like these for people who don't know, we have these different difficulties.
Yes.
And the different difficulties should unlock more stuff. The music should get glitchier.
Sweet.
At some point, yeah.
So theoretically, the harder we get it, the more glitchier it becomes.
Yeah.
God damn. I'm currently on, I think it is the 3rd or 4th difficulty. And I'm already set that I want to complete with each and every character, and I'm currently stuck on the 3rd because it's not my style of playing the game.
yeah, it's tough. But actually, now that we talk about this, I have to write a memo for myself. But yeah, off topic.
Business secrets.
Yeah. Oh yeah. What was I saying? So yeah, and another interesting thing about making the main menu song is I saved it as the last song I make for the game.
Is that usually what you do with OSTs for games?
No. It's specifically for this game.
Okay.
In the sense that the main melody is not fully. This is gonna sound weird. It's not fully written by me. I made it, sure. Like I wrote it in the end, sure. But the melody actually is from the first notes, or like the root notes of all the other songs in the game. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So root note meaning kind of the key of the music, the feeling of the music.
Yeah.
Like per track in the game. I would take those, I would put them in here, and bam, I had the melody.
Yeah.
So the melody is actually all of the songs from the game.
That's interesting too, because one thing we usually, when it comes to developers, let's start there. When it comes to developers and when we're creating a game, what people can think about from time to time is like, oh, when you're making a game, you make the start and then you continue. It's like, no, you make the tutorial last, because you don't actually know until you're done with the game of what mechanics you want to have in the game. So exactly. That's why you usually tend to make the tutorial the last thing you do, because that's where you want to teach all the players of what will happen in the game. And of course, sometimes there might be other suggestions. So it's interesting that you're basically doing the same, but for the music. So it's really fun to hear that style or that angle of working with the music.
Yeah. I mean, the idea kind of being that when you hear the main menu theme, it feels... When you kind of start to play the game, and if you play it like a lot, it kind of makes the music sound more familiar. Like I'm kind of teaching the tonality of the game, the listener, the player, with the main menu, and everything else kind of follows that kind of tonality, if that makes sense. Yeah, it's fun. I like that's kind of stuff when I hear other people talk about this stuff, like similar things or their ideas. It really kind of awakens something within me. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, that's brilliant. I want to think about systems as well, and I change it from game to game. Like actually, I will quickly talk about another game. A game called Scorespringer.
Yep.
I did a thing where we have this one melody that I would actually put into the songs of the other songs of the game. Like all the songs have this main melody inside of them somehow.
Okay.
Like it wouldn't be like the melody like right away, like dee 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 dee. That's the melody of Scorespringer. But I would use that as a kind of thing to implement into other tracks. Not necessarily as a melody. It might even be the song structure follows that, like mathematically or so. And stuff like that. Like, I would even implement it into sound effects. Like in Scorespringer, when you open a computer, it goes, which is the same melody but sped up.
It's very isolated and sped up. Yeah. No, you're not the first one that I hear and have a conversation surrounding this thing, and I just find it so, I would say, majestic to some extent, because it is so unique to some point, but at the same time, it is challenging. And I just love it, to be honest. As just an idea, I love it.
I like games like coming up for movies or whatever. Like they have this kind of main melody, and then they kind of do variations of it. Yeah. But sometimes people do it, or composers do it. Composers, people, two different entities.
Of course they are.
But yeah, I like when composer people do these things, sometimes in kind of sneaky ways. You're like, oh wait, is this? Oh, it is, kind of a thing. I like stuff like that.
But it surprises the listener as well. It's like there's something with all these tracks that has a similarity, and I just can't point my finger on it. And then somebody said, but it's the same melody in all of them. Mind blown.
Exactly. Yeah.
But considering same melodies and working with the same structure, I have a question surrounding specifically the OST that people will be able to listen to when they purchase or listen to the soundtrack on different platforms. The Mechanoid Queen is actually twice on this OST, where the second is featuring Cat Rascal, which is the main character of this. Is Cat Rascal? Cat Rascal, yeah, Cascal. I can't even talk anymore. Now it's my time. But does Cat Rascal has his own kind of theme within this game, considering the featuring you're presenting here on the Queen song?
Not really.
No.
not really. No. This is again if. Let me think. So as games change and stuff, when I started the music, if we would have had the game like it is now, I would have maybe done some things differently.
Yeah.
But, the games change mid-development.
Of course.
Roll with it. But, yeah. Because originally we only had that as our only character. And then later on, we were like, maybe more characters. Yes.
Yep.
But it's already too late, like, music-wise. Yeah, but what was I gonna say? So that's a World 3 song again. And that's where World 4 song again, where I wanted to kind of introduce human elements into the music. So in the game, when you get like maximum combo status in one of the World 4 songs, that rap will actually play on top, but it's very glitched and weird inside the game. And the team, like, this is a thing where, again, the team peer pressure made me do things. I wasn't really planning on doing the rap version in the OST.
Yeah.
But it was one of these, of course you'll do it. What, of course. And I go, I guess I need to call Cat Rascal to come and rap in my workroom.
It's either that or Rat Castle.
Yeah, I think it was more like Rat Castle in this.
Rat Castle is the twin brother of Cat Rascal.
Yeah, definitely. In a glitched universe.
Yes. No, but in all honesty, it was super interesting to get your perspective on the development of the soundtrack for this game. And I think is there anything you believe I haven't asked about surrounding the development that you want to talk or say something about?
Wow. I think we actually covered it pretty well, all in all. I mean, there's a million technical things I could talk about, but that would interest like 3 people out of a million. And of course, time. I can easily branch out another 4 hours, but maybe it's not the wisest idea. And
that's another podcast episode.
Yeah.
Hello, welcome to technical behind the scenes of Gameable audio.
yeah, exactly.
Technical audio.
Yeah.
My side gig.
It's other than in-game versions are in-game, fully interactive, generative systems, and the OST is a linear format.
Yeah.
And we kind of scratched on that a bit.
Definitely.
But yeah, that was maybe the only challenge, like going back to a challenge thing to make them linear, but it turned out fine.
Yeah.
I hope. and yeah, I guess we covered it pretty well.
Yeah.
Oh, actually,
yep.
One. Yeah, almost.
Ooh, close
talking
one.
Talking about the red thread of the game and making everything consistent. And one of the challenges of making music for the game, this is a semi-fast one. So I was trying different tempos when writing the music.
Yeah.
Never felt right. So one evening I decided to play the game and have a metronome next to me. So one of these things that goes like click, click, click,
yes.
click. So I had a digital version of those where I could tap like my phone screen, and it takes the tempo out of my tap frequency, like how many times I tap or how fast I tap. So just look at videos of the game. I would capture videos of different scenarios and tap.
Yeah.
And I would write down the values that I got. And I would look at the most common value that I got, which value came out like the most times.
Interesting.
And it was actually really close always.
Yeah.
But one tempo was like definitely like, if others had like 1 to 3 hits, this one had like 20. So I was like, this is the tempo of the game, and every single song of the game is in this tempo. 172 beats per minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the tempo of the game.
Which is a bit faster than the mainstream music usually have.
Yeah, or games in general. It's like
That too.
Go Mecha Ball is a weird one where, because it's top-down, like isometric perspective, it doesn't look like there's. When you look at it, it looks. I mean, it looks actiony, but if you actually analyze the amount of action that happens in, say, 2 seconds, it's most like. Through my career, I've worked on action games mainly. From like, Nuclear Throne, Downwell, Noita, all these action games.
Yeah.
Go Mecha Ball is literally 4 times more action per second than any other game I've ever worked.
It really comes down to this arcade style as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's the biggest challenge I had the game to mix the game itself. Like it's non-stop action, and I decided, hey, it's meant to be dirty, messy, loud, and confusing. So I'll just let it do its thing. Yeah, 172 BPM. Let's go.
Yeah, and it definitely worked. But yeah. So last question that I have, considering all the music that you have for this soundtrack, which one was the one that you had the hardest time producing?
Oh no!
Oh no, he didn't.
I would hardest time producing. Let me think. So how I worked on the soundtrack was actually I dedicated myself around 5 days per song to write them. So yeah, it's about 5 days per song, except the very first one that I did.
Okay.
Which is one of the World 1 songs.
Yeah.
That I spent multiple weeks on. Because that's, again, I couldn't get the tempo right. That is like before I did the tap tempo thing. By looking at the videos. That's why I did the video thing. I was like, I just can't get the music to set. So I would do that, and I would experiment on the style, like it's too synthesized, it's too modern, it's too this or that. So I really worked on figuring out what the thing is. But other than that, the World 1 boss was super duper hard to get right. It's literally a bunch of noise. Like the source sounds for it are a bunch of noise. Like literal noise.
It's a special boss as well, I would say.
Yeah. That was really, really dumb hard. And the World 3 stuff by being Psytrance first and then changing into machine rock. So, I mean, it wasn't an easy soundtrack to make by any way. Yeah, lots of technical challenges, like lots of them.
No, but it was fun listening to the thought processes, the hardship you had with it, and what your thoughts were surrounding the process of developing this product, music-wise and sound design-wise.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun.
Thank you. So, considering closing this, like closing the episode down for Go Mecha Ball, what's the next step for you right now? Is there anything you can talk about music-wise? Any video game that you can talk about? Or are you working on any original music you want to...
Yeah, so sadly, video game-wise, I can't really talk about my upcoming things due to the very transparent world of NDAs.
Yes, that's usually what it is, but that's okay. Then we know NDA.
Yeah. But I'm making my own music. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I might be too premature of me to say, but I'm working on like a little electronic music album. It's kind of more clubby and dubby, I guess. Because I do music outside of video games as well. Like my life has been around music pretty much my whole life. What else? Well, I am working on a game called Paperhead as well.
Paperhead?
Which I can't talk about. Yeah, it's a FPS game. Currently, we are in the process of trying to make it like commercially real. Like we need to find someone to give us money to make the game.
Find some investor or publisher then.
Yeah, but we had demo on itch.io and there's YouTube videos, TikTok videos of it, Twitter.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Then we can definitely post a little bit about that in the Discord server for people who are interested in it and want to check it out.
Yeah, and then I have talking about. Oh man, let's plug.
Go ahead.
Talking about experimental. I have this experimental alias called Mother Joonas. So Mother Joonas, like a mother, the opposite of a father.
Yes.
Well, not opposite. They ideally work together, not opposite, but mother. So Mother Joonas, this is like my experimental outlet. It's not meant to be mainstream music by any standards. It's kind of inspired by like 60s and 50s kind of electronic music in lots of ways. But with that, I'm playing shows every now and then, and they're also all improvised, experimental, and hopefully, knocking wood, I should have a show this spring where I might be playing with performance artists or on top of a movie or something.
That's really cool.
That's kind of, but that's fun to do, but it's kind of pretty esoteric out there. Like if you like to listen to weird warbles and stuff, without much of traditional musical meaning, then
definitely check it out then. So if people find you interesting, is there any way they can get in contact with you, or do you have any social medias you wanna promote where they can reach out to you or follow you?
Well, my Twitter is probably the easiest way. Twitter Kissa3, KISSAKOLME. That's me, or Joonas Turner. If you write my name, you'll probably, hopefully pop up. At least as me, and not someone else. And then my YouTube is the same. Kissa3, Joonas Turner. Like, I'm planning on making my YouTube more active again someday. But, being busy with finalizing Mecha Ball, releasing it, I haven't had time to keep it that active. But I used to post videos, just random videos where I just talk about whatever people want to hear about.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. No, but all the different links and everything will be available in our main post at videospelsklubben.se as well. So even if you don't get everything, you can always find that in the information from the episode. So do not fret, everybody who's listening. But anything else you want to promote right now, or should we close this episode down?
Go Mecha Ball. Go get it.
Definitely. I won't argue on that point. I bought it on release. So
yeah, thank you.
So with that said, other episodes of the Gameable Audio, you'll find those on our homepage at videospelsklubben.se. You find us on Spotify or in your closest podcast app. Feel free to follow and comment one of our social medias, either on Facebook or Instagram. Just search for Gameable Audio and you'll find us there. Feel free to talk about everything. What did you think about the music for Go Mecha Ball? Have you played the game or not, etc. You can also support this podcast by becoming a Patreon backer, and this is for future content upgrades and quality upgrades to begin with. But in the end, of course, we're going to support future composers as a small fund, so to speak, when I don't need any more money. And our current awesome backers that we do have today is Daniel Onemark, Lars Schenström, Titti Schenström, Kevin Wikström, and Mike Björkholm. All the links where you can either buy or support the composer behind this music, of course, is Joonas Turner here. You'll find those in our main post at videospelsklubben.se. And as a little bit of a thank you, of course, when this episode comes out, the soundtrack is not available for everybody. You are able to pre-order it over at Bandcamp, but as soon as it goes live, Joonas here has given us one code that we can utilize in order to have a giveaway for this. So this is amazing, and I want to give a large thank you for that. And next episode theme is going to be a special one, as we are going to be guests yet again. And this time is going to be an artist. And Joonas, I don't know if do you know about Instant Remedy by any chance?
Instant Remedy?
Yeah, a guy who made remixes of C64 music and some Atari.
Huh, right.
Nothing you know of?
I don't think so, but C64 and Amiga music is very familiar from the tracker era.
Exactly. No, but if not, you know which episode you should be listening to next time in 2 weeks.
That's right.
So in the next episode, we're going to have Instant Remedy joining in to talk a lot more about working on music, and of course we're going to talk a little bit about his first live performance, which I attended to as well. And the podcast theme music was, as always, composed by the amazing Thor Myrdal. And with that said, I want to thank everybody for joining in on this episode. My name is Kristoffer Schenström. This was episode 30, where we talked about Mecha Ball with Joonas Turner. Have a good time, and see you all guys next time.
Have a good one.